What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today we're going to be checking out my haul from the California Custom Knife Show, or CCKS. I just got back from day 2, so this video should be live within a day or so of the show. But if you're watching it in the future, this was the fall 2024 show in Woodland Hills. A couple things about the show before we get into it. There's a couple local knife shows here in Southern California, but CCKS is probably the largest. They do it twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. Probably the largest at around 50 or so booths. Now, it's definitely been growing from show to show. Still not going to be as big as any of the blade shows, but great turnout of vendors. I've gotten some of my favorite knives at this show throughout the years, including one I picked up this weekend we'll be seeing later in the video. So I always love going out to it. Don't have to pay for lodging or travel or anything like that since it's local. So I do always try and make it out to both days, talk to as many of the attendees as I can, meet as many vendors, and just get that full experience. But this show can easily be walked in a single day, probably within even actually a few hours. You can see all of the tables. So if you're only going to choose one day or the other, especially if it's your first time going to a knife show, I always recommend day 1. It's just the full experience. It's exciting. It's a super lively show. There's people camped out overnight after the Friday Night Blade Affair for first come, first serves on Saturday. There's a lot more lottos, a lot more auctions, just more knives to see in general, and a lot more people in terms of attendees that show up as well. Now, if you're not into the big crowds, day 2 might be the better option. It's definitely more mellow. There are, though, some vendors that don't show up at all because they sold out on day 1. There's less lottos and auctions, and a lot of the knives, even at the vendors that are still there, are sold now. And so you're not going to see quite as many knives as you would if you went on day 1. But it is a little bit of a slower, more mellow experience for those that get stressed in the crowds. There's also the opportunity to get some deals on day 2 where people maybe just don't want to take home inventory. So rather than ship it back or check it in a bag, they offer it at a slight discount. But that's not every single booth, so that's not a guaranteed, but another small advantage of going to day 2. But again, if it's your first knife show and you want that full experience, always recommend day 1. That being said, the other really interesting thing about this show is that it's a pretty high-end show. I'm talking in terms of averages for the table. I think Blade Show probably has all of the same high-end vendors and custom knife makers and things like that, but they have a lot more variety where they have the ultra budget stuff like Civivi and Kaiser and QSP and stuff are at Blade Show, where you're not going to find those brands at this show. And so in the end, it averages out to a much lower price point at Blade Show, where at this show, they skew much more towards the higher end. And so they have brands like Shirogorov, Chris Reeve, Koenig, Strider, where the average price of a knife on their table is probably $800 to $1,000. They probably have individual knives that cost a couple $1,000s. And so it definitely skews the price point higher. Like I said, they're probably at Blade Show as well, but they have less of the budget brands here. They do have a lot of the middle tier stuff in that $300 to $500 range, stuff like ProTech, Jack Wolf, Vero, Knife Standards, Knoll Knives. There's plenty of those options, but there's really nothing that's like sub $100 average. The closest to that is probably like Reich and Riot, which I'd say is probably closer to $150 or maybe even up to about $200. And then there's some knife stores, like local knife stores that get booths there that have Benchmades and Civivis and Microtechs and things like that, where they're again probably $150 to $250 range. But there's only a handful of those, so it definitely skews more towards that upper end. So you definitely have to have some budget. Now, that being said, I didn't bring a crazy budget to this show. I wasn't really planning on picking up any knives except one if I can get it. It was very limited. I did end up getting it, so if we talked before the show, you already know what that is. But I ended up leaving with 3 knives, which was even a surprise to me. 2 of those you will definitely not be expecting based on what I've said so far, though. But that being said, I picked up some random odds and ends, so we'll look at those first. We'll save the knives for last and just kind of get into it. So this first one I'm not counting as a knife. It's a utility knife, though. This is the Zero Smooth Op in gray. Really cool looking finish. I kind of wish I went with a different finish because this one I found to be a little bit more slippery. I handled all of the textured ones and they weren't slippery at all, and so I was fidgeting with this one in my car and ended up throwing it in my passenger seat on the drive home. And so definitely probably would go with the textured one next time, but I love the look of this one. You have the lanyard hole in the back, and again, it's a utility blade with a unique mechanism. So this is a drawer that kind of slides out with the utility blade in it. When you retract that drawer, utility blade stays out. And when you retract it again, it sucks the utility blade back in. So a really unique mechanism. I believe the guys at the table said the guy who designed this was his first design. So interesting first design for sure. These are made in the USA by Reeve Manufacturing. Let's actually show that from the bottom so we can see what that looks like. There it is with the drawer. Again, I'll retract that, the blade stays there, then retract it again, and the blade comes back in. Really easy to change the blade without tools. I'll show that in the full video for this one. But these were pretty budget friendly for being made in the USA. I think it was either $65 or $75, so nothing too crazy. A little bit pricey for a utility knife, but definitely not the most expensive utility knife we've seen on this channel. And I thought it was just really fun to fidget with and nifty design, so had to pick that one up. Now next up is the Jax from Jack Wolf Knives. He brought these to Blade Show West, but obviously I didn't make it out to Blade Show West, so I hadn't been able to pick one up. He hasn't sold these online yet, although I know he plans to at some point. These are basically throwing stars, little ninja stars, but they don't have a live edge. These are blunted, so they're not going to hurt anyone. You can drop it in your pocket without any sort of sheath, without worrying about it. They're mainly just decorative, fun little pieces, although the first thing I did when I got home on Saturday was toss this into a pile of blankets a few times. It's just fun to toss around. It does come with the Jack Wolf bead as well, and so really fun little pickup. I believe these were $50 for titanium, $60 for the carbon options. They had camo and fat carbon options as well, and so just kind of a fun pickup and a really cool one. I debated whether or not to get the carbon or the titanium. I just kind of like the weightiness of the titanium. It actually feels a little bit lighter than the carbon to me. I'm not sure if that's accurate. I didn't weigh them out. Feels a little bit lighter, but I just like the kind of metallic feel of it. It gives it the more authentic ninja star feel, but really cool pickup. Always good to see Ben, of course, as well, so that was great as well. Now from there, let's go to actually a day 2 pickup. This is from Tactile Turn, or just a Tactile booth, because they have their knives as well, and this is their switch. And I had my eye on this online. I missed out on it. It sold out. I don't know if they've restocked it, but they definitely had them at the show. This has their new switch mechanism, which basically works like a light switch. Flip it down, pen comes out, flip it up, it retracts. And so really easy to fidget with, even more so than the bolt action. Super fun action and something you don't really see all that often. Normal body from what you see on the Tactile Turn titanium pens. It says Tactile Turn 2024 on the interior of that pocket clip. I doubt you'll be able to see that, but it does say that. You'll just have to take my word for it. I was hoping for a shorty, and so they didn't have those. I don't know if they had them on the drop either, but they didn't have them, and so I kind of thought I'd wait. But then on day 2, I went back over there and just enjoyed the mechanism so much. I figured if they do eventually release a shorty, I will pick that up as well. But for now, I picked this one up. I think probably around $150 or so. And now a majority of my Tactile pens have come from different knife shows. I don't know why I always just end up with one of their pens at shows. So that was a fun pickup for sure. Now these next 2 are something new from Reeve. These are just the bags. Actually, I already have them out of the bag. And that is milled titanium pocket clips. And so obviously other brands have made them in the past, but they made their own. And this is the first time we're seeing them out in public. And they said that they will eventually release these to retailers and probably on their website, but it may be several months. And so for the foreseeable future, the only place to get them is at shows. And so I picked up 2. There were 3 total. And so my buddy picked up the other one that I'm missing. But this is the stonewash. The one I'm missing is the blasted, and then they have the polished on the end. Price-wise, it's $40 for the stonewash. It was $50 for the blasted and $70 for the polished. And so I picked these 2 up with specific knives in mind, figuring that I probably won't be able to get them online in the foreseeable future, so might as well grab them now. And those were also day 2 pickups. I didn't even see them on the first day when I went to their booth. And so that kind of leads us into the knives. So we're going to start with the big score, the one that I was after, and then we'll get into the other 2 after that. So the only knife I had planned to buy, if I can get it, and there was only 7 of each, so there were 7 drop point and 7 Tonto, and that was the Reeve Umon. And this has the DLC finish. They also had a couple other finishes of the Nkosi, but I've been wanting an Umon anyway, and I think this is the coolest version of it that I've ever seen. Only 7 of them, so it was super limited. Super grateful that I was able to grab it, and I think that DLC helps with the action. You saw me just kind of flick that open. I haven't worked on the action or polished the washers or anything like like that on it. It just kind of came out of the box like that. And so still not quite as smooth as my Sebenza, but a lot less breaking in period. There was basically no breaking in period. So that break in is going to get it ultra smooth, I'm sure, but it feels great right out of the box. Super excited about it. The DLC I think looks incredible. It's not only on that blade, but then we have the polished titanium handle with the DLC in that patterning there. The hardware is DLC'd, has that nice shiny look to it, and just looks great overall. The pocket clip on this is not bad, but I think I'm going to like it with that polished clip a little bit better, so definitely going to swap it out. Wanted to wait to make the video until I showed everything, but definitely going to be swapping that out in the next day or two. Also comes with a bead on this one. I did want to show my Sebenza real quick. This was not a pickup from the show, but just to show the pocket clip that I want to replace. And so you can see this one's nice and snail trailed up. It serves perfectly fine. I don't have a problem with it, which is why I haven't switched it out. I thought about switching it for one of the Nice Guy Machine Company a while back, but just missed out on the drop and never wanted to track it on the secondary. But you can see this stonewash one is definitely going to match the pattern on this one nicely. The stonewash on my Sebenza, so that's going to go on the Sebenza. The polished is going to go on this DLC Umon. But absolutely love this pickup. I'm probably more excited for this knife than any knife that I've ever purchased. I've just been hyped ever since I got it, and so really excited about it. Now, I did mention two other knives. These weren't planned purchases. In fact, they weren't purchases at all. These were a gift from Joseph. If you're on the weekly lives, you've probably seen him in the chat. Even if you're not on the lives on my channel, he's on some of the other lives as well. But he's local to me. We've met before. He didn't bring these specifically for me. He just had them in his bag. We got to talking about them, and he offered them up to me. I did offer to pay for them, but he wasn't asking for payment. And that is the two popular Ozar TRS knives. So we have the 2024 and the 2023. I never got my hands on either of these because I don't really have a convenient Walmart nearby, which is kind of odd. When I lived in the Midwest, there were in every small city, you have these super Walmarts, and then now I'm in Southern California where you'd think they'd be everywhere, and the closest one's probably like a 25-minute, 30-minute drive for me, and so I almost never go to Walmart, and so I just never went to seek these out. But excited to get my hands on it. I'm definitely going to do some separate videos. I purposely didn't open these up until after this video, just kind of wanted to show them as is. He still had a new unbox. He had one of the new ones to show at the show, so I got to handle that one a little bit, and the action was very impressive. I know Tim over at Tim's School of Fish got his and had to do a lot to get his action right. On the one I played with, the action was very good. So I'm excited to get these out of the packaging and check them out. Super appreciative of Joseph for just kind of handing them over. Like I said, I wanted to pay for him, but he wouldn't take it, and so really great guy. Always good to see him, and yeah, super excited about these for sure. Not what you'd expect from a custom knife show though, two knives that are $10 each or whatever they sell for, but super fun nonetheless. I did get a bunch of swag and stuff I'm not showing just because I have some of the swag on the table. It didn't all fit, but lots of little stickers and patches and things like that, shot glasses and some fun stuff. But let me know what you think of my haul. If you went to CCKS, let me know what you picked up at the show. Let me actually make sure to get this in the frame. We're actually going to cover up some of that swag so that we can get the Umon in the frame. But let me know what you picked up. This is one random piece of fun swag that I got. This was from Armor. So I just did a video on the squirrel, and he had a bunch of blank parts that were seconds, or not even seconds. This one, you can see the pivot hole is completely drilled out too big. It's like the size of a Spidey hole, and so he couldn't use this blade, and so rather than throw them away, he just had them as swag on the table. He had some scales and stuff, nothing that you could build a complete knife with because they were all kind of damaged and broken parts, but I thought it was such a fun piece of swag, so I'm going to show that one off. But again, would love to hear what you got at the show. If you're on Instagram, message me pictures. I want to see them. If you don't have that, feel free to email me. My email is always in the description of the video and on the About Me section of my YouTube page. But appreciate you watching, and again, would love to hear your thoughts on my pickups at this show. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, joining the channel as a member. All help the channel out a ton, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.